physical gold is an insurance policy against financial chaos. And anyone who believes there's no financial chaos ahead of us needs to be paying attention to the 6 o'clock news.
Welcome back to the Crash Labs. Today, I have a very amazing guest, Mr. Bob Moriarty. Bob, welcome to the show. It's been a long time I've wanted to have you on, so it's my great pleasure to have you on today.
Well,
looking forward to this conversation.
It's certainly an honor. You have some great guests.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, well, we're picking up some traction here. It's been really good. So, I think this one will really be a fantastic pod for the listeners, and hopefully we have a great conversation. I know it likely will be. So just before we turn the cameras on, you were saying let's pick it up right there. We're living in some wild times.
Well, you can pick any continent, any subject, any government, any war, any commodity, any investment. Pick one. They're all
so
crazy.
Yeah. Well, let's start with here's a good place to start, Bob.
Okay.
Why don't we give our guests a little bit about your background? You've been in this space covering it for a very, very long time. What's Bob Moriarty's background? How'd you get into all this?
I'm a contrarian. I was in the Marine Corps. I was a pilot. I went to Vietnam. I was in Vietnam in 1968. Gold was $35 an ounce. And I looked around at how much money we were spending. And I said, I don't think this makes sense. I think it has to be bad for the dollar. And I started buying gold and silver in 1968 just as kind of a hedge. And of course, that's exactly what it turned out to be. And then I was totally out of the space for years. And in 1999, when gold hit bottom, I looked around and said, people are too negative, and this has to be a good place to invest. And the low was in September of 99, and the low in silver was 2001. But there was a giant rally from 2000 really until 2008. So my gut feel tends to be pretty good.
Now, you started a newsletter, a popular website, 321 Gold, and have been a very powerful voice, I think, for a lot of retail shareholders that look to your guidance, your input, your perspectives. What was the sort of purpose of 321 Gold? Like, was it just simply to, it never struck me as somebody who was doing this to make money, so to speak, beyond, your own investing behavior. Is it because you just want to educate people and help, spread the good word, and you've been successful in investing in this space and you wanted to share that? Like, how, what motivated you to start doing all that?
You just answered the question.
Yeah.
Literally, my wife and I were semi-retired. We didn't need to make money, but we needed to do something. And we started the website in 2001. I went to a gold show in Miami in April or May of 2001. And you could have put a blindfold on and picked up a bowling ball and thrown it in any direction, and you wouldn't have hit anyone. And whoever was running the show literally was bussing in old ladies with purple hair who were running around stealing everything that people had on their table. It was the funniest thing I ever saw. And I thought, if you're a contrarian, this has to be the bottom. It couldn't possibly be any worse. And I remember Nova Gold was there, and they had a big, I'm going to tell you, it was a 10 or 15 ounce nugget, and they would put the nugget on their table, and they would talk about what they were doing in Alaska. And I said, that nugget's worth a lot of money. And they said, yeah, but, we're not particularly worried about it. And I said, well, it's a really good sign, though, because when someone steals that, the market is waking up. And sure enough, a few years later, somebody stole their nugget.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
wow, that's hilarious. That's crazy. Yeah. So we went through the last cycle. Obviously, people, as you're saying, people in the early 2000s woke up, and we had a pretty hefty bull run with a blip in 08, of course, with the financial crisis, and then back on she went and ripped like crazy to probably about 2012. As a contrarian, how do you catch a falling knife? When do you know? Do you just kind of stick it out and accumulate when everyone hates the space? Do you back away from it? And how do you know when to get back in, when to get back active?
Strange enough, as a contrarian, you have a tremendous competitive advantage. What you have to do is you have to learn to read people's sentiment. If you go back to 2008, in March or so of 2008, everybody was wildly bullish. And I get really nervous when everybody's bullish because it just, it doesn't feel right to me. And sure enough, it crashed and then soared into 2011. And this is a terrible thing to say. Eric Sprott was pimping his silver ETF. And the Sprott silver ETF got up to a 25% premium to the price of silver, which meant you could go down to a coin store and you could buy an ounce of silver for $50. But if you went to Sprott and bought the silver ETF, you had to pay $62.50. I thought this is crazy. So I wrote a piece, I think, on April 25th, and I said, okay, this is what a top looks like. And the reason I said it's what a top looks like, because it was a top. I tell people, and I've written about 10 books and written 2 books specifically about investing in resource stocks, that you don't have to know anything about gold. You don't have to know anything about mining. You don't have to know anything about people running a company if you can measure sentiment. And there's a million ways to measure sentiment. Do you remember 2015, the guy that said that gold was chia pet?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I remember that.
That's an absolutely perfect contrarian signal. Now, let's
like
talk.
the pet rock kind of example when they say, gold's just a pet rock.
That's right. Right now, okay, in the crypto space, you've got the Dalai Lama, who started a crypto. You've got Donald Trump, the day before he became president, comes out with the meme coin. And I thought, wait a minute. I thought we were talking about how unethical the Democrats were. It seems to be a little bit unseemly for the President of the United States to be coming out with a crypto coin. And the coin got up to $15. and then it declined. 86% of the people who invested in it lost money. The young woman who came up with the Hakta, do you remember that?
Yeah, Haktua coin.
Yeah, she came out with her coin. I thought, wait a minute, okay, you couldn't get any better signals than this, and literally in the last day or two, you could see the cryptocurrencies have started to crash. So the stock market appears to be rolling over, and it looks like it wants to crash. The cryptocurrencies are rolling over, and they're crashing. And there's lots of signals out there. You just have to listen to the signal. And I need to go back and answer your question because I didn't give you a real answer. We started the website because we wanted to support the mining industry, and there is no mining industry that you could support. So we would support it by supporting companies and supporting investors. And to the extent that, am I in it for the money? Hell no. Okay.
Yeah.
I like the fact that you're wearing blue jeans. I don't own regular pants, okay? I got blue jeans. That's all I wear. I used to go to gold shows, and they would ask me, why aren't you wearing a coat and tie like everybody else? And I said, everybody that's wearing a coat and tie at a gold show is selling something. And I'm not selling anything. I'm giving it away.
Yeah, no, I hear you entirely. I think from my perspective, I came into this industry. I was a geologist, right? Working in production, working underground, working in exploration. I worked on multiple continents for big companies, small companies, and all the rest of it. And I sort of had these delusions of smart money. Like I sort of felt like we were doing these things in the bush, and people were really paying attention. We would spend all this time and energy crafting a press release or working on cross sections and long sections or we just drilled this new zone or stepped out and we hit this hole, and there must have been and I would always assume the audience was millions, like we're gonna put this press release out and it's really gonna make a mark, and so I'm careful with my scientific jargon. I'm careful editing things, and and then suddenly I came to Toronto. In 2013, that's when I made my shift to the capital markets with Pine Tree Capital. Sheldon gave me a job, and I got down here, and I couldn't have been more wrong. I saw people with their wingtip shoes and their pocket squares prancing around, and there wasn't like the whole thing was just almost like made me want to gag. It almost made me. I don't want to call it depression because I'm not a depressed person, I don't think, but it definitely bummed me out to think, holy shit, this is how this works. And then, what drew me to this side of the business with Earth Labs and CEO.CA and the Northern Miner and Mining.com and these brands is that I just wanted to sort of break the wheel. I wanted to. Like you, I realized there isn't really a sector to support per se. It's just about giving an audience and amplifying the voices and the teams and the companies and the people that are really out there trying to do a good thing. And it's a space full of passionate treasure hunters, and some better than others, and some with better ideas than others, and some with more luck than others, and that's all fine and well. But I just felt like the way the industry was sort of being pitched to people wasn't genuine, and so that's why I don't conscribe to the wingtip shoes and the suit either.
Well, strange
Sorry,
enough,
long-winded comment.
Go back to any of the photos from the 1860s, 1880s, 1900, 1920. And you're always going to find guys in suits and ties. And if a guy's wearing a suit and tie, he's selling something. there's some really wonderful things about the mining business, and there's a really ugly side to it too. And I've always tried to balance the two. Most mining companies are going to fail. That said, you can get stories where stock goes up 50-fold and you can retire, and they're out there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I had the great pleasure with Newfound Gold to experience, a great team, a good idea, a handsome amount of luck, and really the majesty that could be delivered. And I just, for me, that was the dream. That was, going into something like that. That was kind of the conquest, right? To see if I could, have an idea and do something like that. And I was really, really, really happy that you took a shining to it and got involved and were such a great supporter and advocate for it, especially in the early days, because it helped us a lot.
Well,
So I really appreciate
here's
that.
what's interesting. Let's be candid. Mining companies are run by human beings. Okay, now I happen to like Colin Cattell a lot, but he raised a lot of money and drilled and drilled and drilled and drilled, never came up with a resource. And everybody started saying, hey, wait a minute, they haven't got a resource, which was absolutely correct. However, if you look at the drill intercepts, they are world class. This is Fosterville all over, except Fosterville was 400 meters deep, and this starts right at surface. You could go to Gander, Newfoundland, and I flew out of Gander, Newfoundland 150 or 200 times. You could take a pick and a shovel and a gold pan, and you could walk out to their property, and you could earn a living. It was the most amazing thing I ever saw. And I was sitting at the bar drinking beer. I should have been out there with a pick and a shovel. But the stock declined, okay, and it was a change in management. And the new management has come in and they're swinging for the fences, and they understand you've got to give investors what they want. And in the next quarter or two, they're going to come out with a resource. And frankly, I think it's a barn burner. I don't see how that couldn't be 10 or 20 million ounces. Now, the resource isn't going to be that high, but the resource is going to be real, and it's going to show how much potential there is. And you're a young guy, and I'm going to tell you, that was the most amazing story that I ever saw, literally from the first drill hole. That was a success. Now, did they stumble and did they make some mistakes? Absolutely. Do I care? No. Okay. Anybody buying Newfound Gold now is going to make money, but there's a better way to buy it than buying Newfound Gold. What is it?
Earth Labs. No, just kidding.
No, you're really close. You got half of it.
What's that?
Labrador Gold.
Oh, Labrador Gold. Well,
Yeah.
we bought Labrador. We bought Labrador Gold back in the. Oh yeah, but Lab still has the stock allegedly.
Yeah. Labrador's got 13 or 14 cents share in Newfound Gold shares, and $5 million in cash. And everybody said, oh, we're unhappy with them because stock went down. If you buy Newfound Gold, you're a thief. If you buy Labrador Gold, you're a burglar because goodies are there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think when we first made that discovery, I think a lot of people don't understand the difference between orogenic gold or as traditionally called lode gold versus let's say epithermal porphyries, the types of big systems you'd have in Nevada. these big sort of epithermal Carlin-style systems. Um, you know, Widely dispersed low-grade bulk tonnage. That's something that the market has become very accustomed to. They've become accustomed to seeing drilling go into those things, economics being wrapped around them, resources being quantified, variance being quite low. So things like nugget are really scary words. Continuity is like the biggest, the big word, because of course, if you're drilling a porphyry, it has to be continuous because it's like garden soil plus with a little bit of gold in it. So it has to be extraordinarily continuous, and then it has to be homogeneous as well. So you can't have, nugget smearing, over 250 meters of core, all of this grade. But in the world of orogenic gold, and again, these are the most spectacular deposits on planet Earth. They free cash flow better than anything else on the planet. They all share one thing in common. They've got jewelry boxes. They've got these fantastic treasure boxes, and quite frankly, they also nucleate all of these large companies. And so if you look at like Agnico or Barrick or Newmont or Goldcorp or any historic large company, their crown jewel of their production profile was almost always some orogenic, high-grade cash flow machine. And whether that be in Red Lake or Kirkland Lake or in Val-d'Or or you name it, it's like that. And so these things are really, really unique. You mentioned Fosterville. Fosterville's like that too. Now, to set expectations is, again, with these sorts of things, when you look at resources, they don't tend to do that well on resource quantification. I think one of the things that I had set out early with Newfound Gold was that we weren't, Colin and I were pretty steadfast on this, is that we weren't going to do a resource. That wasn't something in our cards. And we looked at Great Bear as an example and said, well, we don't really need to. If there's a large company that wants to take a strategic position at some point, they can roll up their sleeves and have a look. Of course, we're going to get faced with all sorts of pressure to do it. But we were pretty, we were students of the Lassonde curve. We also knew that we had a district to explore. There's 130 kilometers of mineralized fault there. We've only started scratching the surface. Most of that money, most of that 450,000 meters was in the top 6 kilometers. So there's...
Let me stop you for just a minute.
Sure.
Quentin Henney and I had a long conversation about this, and what you just said is absolutely true. Fosterville is an analog for Newfound Gold, and the management at Kirkland Lake Gold was fighting Eric Sprott over buying Fosterville. And Fosterville had gone through 3 different owners before that, okay? But they had the gold, but it was deep and it was nuggety. And Quentin Henney said, you guys need this. So Kirkland Lake Gold paid $1 billion for it, and Kirkland Lake was a $3 billion company then, and Fosterville took them to an $18 billion company. Now, Quentin Henney and I have talked about this, and I've never talked to Colin about this, and maybe I was remiss in doing so because I admire him. I think that it's an amazing discovery. Everybody that worked on that project was first class. Quentin Henney said all these major companies started off and they would define 2 or 3 or 4 million ounces, and they would go into production. Now, if Newfound Gold had done that, Newfound Gold would be at $25 stock right now, and Colin Cattell would be a billionaire. It's still going to happen, okay? But this idea that you can drill off 175 kilometers, you can't do it, okay? Start off with something, put the booger into production, okay? Start generating cash flow. The most amazing thing I have seen, and I think I've been somewhere between 400 and 500 projects, when you guys took the hose, the fire hose, and washed off that rock, and you had gold right at the surface, I looked at that and said, holy shit. Okay. You could take a
Yeah.
pick and earn money. Okay. That was the most amazing thing. So, Newfound Gold has an extraordinary story. People are going to wake up to it, and the stock's going to go a lot higher. And I wish investors hadn't gotten so impatient. But does Newfound have the goods? Of course they do. It's a Fosterville, but it's bigger and it's closer to surface.
Yeah, I have to obviously be careful because of how close I am to everything to comment on everything. But from my perspective, I mean, I'll be consistent with what I've always said, which is, look at I've had the great luxury in my life to work on a lot of world-class mines and a lot of world-class projects. I worked at Kirkland Lake Gold. I worked at Macassa. I was underground in Macassa lots. I worked there twice. There's also Dickinson and Red Lake. I'd seen world-class high-grade gold as the best you could see. I remember with Fosterville vividly. I was on the capital market side at that point, but I do recall that story extraordinarily well. And, one of the things that struck me with Newfound when we went out to Gander initially, so when I went out there, I want to say this is back in 2016, I had gone out and walked myself with Alan Keats. He was just showing me around, and we had to stitch all those claims together. And I was walking around with Alan, and I hadn't seen so much high-grade gold, so many bonanza, unbelievable specimens just lying everywhere on the ground in the float, scattered over such a massive footprint. I had sampled my fair share of muck piles in world-class mines and high-grade zones, high-grade stopes even, and I could count on one hand the number of times I was getting values back like what we regularly get out of some of that drilling. So it's so insane to think about that. So you're absolutely right. You can just look at the drilling and just look at the intercepts, and you've got a project. There's no doubt. And it was so prolific. But nonetheless, the market is impatient, as you said. I think Pierre Lassonde has famously published a beautiful chart that everybody knows all too well about that impatience. And when you look about Fosterville, and you mentioned it well with Fosterville and that acquisition with KL, guidance was set. I think the first year guidance was set around 100,000 ounces, and they smashed through that. They did like 3 times that.
Right. Right.
So cash flow is the great vindicator. The production is the great vindicator for these types of projects. You just have to get there. And once you start mining them, then the masses will switch on and figure it out. Happened to Pretium. Pretium was the same thing, right? Pretium was an exceptionally exciting discovery. And then, resource, PEA, was tumultuous. It traded down to, 300 million? And it sold after, a season or two of production for $2 billion? I mean,
Look at pure gold.
Insane. Yeah.
Look at pure gold. Okay. Here's something nobody ever talks about. The market has cycles, and to the extent that you have to match the expectations of the market, there's times, basically in the last year, you could have drilled into the Federal Reserve in New York City, and nobody would give a shit. If you put on Federal Reserve crypto, then they would give it a shit. But, you could have hit 24 karat gold over 400 meters and nobody would care. But all things change, and crypto is rolling over, and the stock market's rolling over, and money's starting to flow back into the market. And these are all things I was predicting 2 and 3 months ago, and they're coming about now. And we are going to go into a mania like most investors have never seen. There's a lot of 10-cent stocks now that are going to be $5.
Do you What would be your strategy right now, Bob, for somebody who's just trying to get their beak wet in all this? They've been, they had their Hawk Tuah coin and their Trump coin just get annihilated, and they're looking across the table and saying, "Oh shit, okay, I just listened to Denny and Bob go off on gold, and Jaime Carrasco, or I chimed into Palisades radio and I listened to some stuff there. I'm starting to drink the Kool-Aid here. I think this is probably where it's at. I should hedge myself." What do you think the strategy should be for those people? Do you think buying some physical, blending that with the the large caps, a basket of more speculative plays? Like how does one get their beak wet in this?
Okay, that's a really difficult question, because it's one thing for a 30-year-old and another thing for a 70-year-old. There are times that buying the mid-tiers and the senior are the way to go. I look at gold. Physical gold is an insurance policy against financial chaos. And anyone who believes there's no financial chaos ahead of us needs to be paying attention to the 6 o'clock news, because if you look and see all of the corruption that the government is now displaying, I knew it was corrupt, but I had no idea it was that corrupt. I used to say, geez, I'm wondering where the hell all the money's going. And it was going everywhere, okay? And then Trump came in, and Elon Musk, and they're just tearing people a new asshole is what they're doing, okay?
Yeah.
And they're going to eliminate a lot of fraud. We're in an interesting situation. We've got over 8 tons of gold, supposedly, and that's valued at $42.22. And if they revalue that, okay, we could pay off a lot of the national debt. The United States is in a death trap of debt. We are financially bankrupt, and we need to do something about it. And quite bluntly, I don't see any solution that doesn't include gold. But let's go back to your question. What should people do to dip their toes into the water? I'm a big fan of buying what's cheap. Now, if you look at platinum, palladium, silver, and gold, right now, what's cheap?
Silver.
Bingo. Okay. Everybody hates silver. Okay. Oh, God, gold's making new highs every day, and my silver's not making a new high. God, that's a great thing to happen, okay, because there's opportunity there. And the beauty about silver is there's only half a dozen or 10 serious silver stocks. Gold stocks are more difficult because there literally are hundreds of them, but there are some extraordinary stories. Now, you have to be familiar with what's going on in the Yukon with Sitka and Snowline Gold.
Snowline, yeah.
And Trifecta. There's half a dozen companies up there. Tara Christie, do you know her?
Tara Christie, what's the company?
Banyan.
Oh, Banyan Gold. Okay, yeah. Yep, I'm familiar with the story.
Okay, I just love her. I've known Tara Christie for 15 years. She's absolutely wonderful. You can buy gold from Tara Christie for, I think, $7 an ounce, okay? Victoria Gold had a technical failure, and they went into bankruptcy, which was an overreaction by the government of the Yukon. That project is going back into production, but there are half a dozen companies in that area, all of which are going to be successful. And some extraordinary stories. Snowline went from something like 20 cents to $8 or something like that in 2 years. You can do that in the junior mining business, okay? You can get a 10 or 20 or 30-fold return, and you only have to do it once or twice, and you can retire.
Right. Now, you mentioned something interesting. So with the Trump administration and all this, What do you think about Fort Knox, Bob? What do you think's in there? Think she's empty?
No, I think they got
Or do
it.
you think it's full of Dogecoin?
The strange thing is, I think they've got it. The good news is they've got the gold, and the bad news is it's 90% gold.
It's all like dribs and drabs. It's jewelry
No,
and
no, no,
ingots.
no.
And
It's melted down U.S. coins.
okay.
Okay, they're going to have to reassay it and resmelt the gold. I
Right.
do believe the gold is there, but we've done so many stupid things. It costs 3 cents to make a penny. Okay, it doesn't make any sense to spend 3 cents to earn 1 cent. Okay, so somebody finally come up and said, inflation has destroyed the value of the penny and the nickel, and we need to get rid of them, and they're going to do that. There's a lot of things that Trump does I do not agree with. What's going on in the Yukon is exceptionally dangerous. What's going on in the Middle East is exceptionally dangerous. However, getting the finances of the United States government under control and getting rid of the corruption in the DOJ and the FBI and the CIA and USAID, I was shocked. And I'm old and I'm cynical, but no matter how cynical I get, I just can't keep up. I'm seeing things that are amazing to me, and we need to get it under control. And for the first time, we've got a president saying we need to do something about these very real problems that we know exist. But one of the things that I don't think anybody is talking about, Donald Trump is going to be great for mining, okay, especially in the United States, okay.
Yep.
There's three ways to create wealth. You can grow it, you can manufacture it, or you can mine it, okay. We have a very efficient agriculture system. We're not going to increase the net worth of the United States, increasing the efficiency of agriculture because it's pretty efficient. We need to rebuild our manufacturing capability, but that's going to take 10 or 15 years to do. But one of the things that we could do is eliminate all the red tape bullshit around mining, okay, and start getting some of these projects into production that have been on hold for 10 years or 15 years. Are you familiar with Rosebud in Arizona?
Rosebud.
Yeah,
Which one's that?
the copper project near Tucson.
Who's that owned by?
Oh,
Is that
I
that
don't know.
is that that big massive one that's been sitting there for like 20 years? That's
Thank you. Absolutely.
yeah, okay.
And
Yeah,
one
but
piece of red tape after another piece of red tape after another piece of red tape. And
yeah.
one of the things should be obvious to anybody. I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. Uh, the United States government for the last 20 years under every administration has been remarkably inefficient and corrupt, and we need to change that. And to the extent,
Who owns that Rosebud though, Bob? It's a big company, isn't it? Like a massive, like it's
yeah,
one of the
yeah,
big boys.
yeah, yeah,
It's like Freeport McMoran or something, right? I want to say.
yeah.
I don't know.
It's a big company, and they've been banging their heads against the wall for years and years and years and years. And all they're doing is making lawyers rich.
You know, I found somebody who has a royalty on it.
Really?
Yeah.
You
No.
need to be very nice to them.
Well, it's weird. It was like super exciting. It's a friend of mine, and he's a lawyer. Shout out to him anyway. He'll be listening to this. And so he found somebody who has a royalty on it. It was just from like it was inherited, and she was looking to sell it. It was her father's or grandfather's, something like this. And then there was all these other business partners. But the problem is it's a royalty, but it's on limited. It's on like limited production. Like it's capped at X amount of dollars, and then I
Right,
think it's like
right.
$10 million or something, and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's a royalty, but not a forever royalty, unfortunately. So
Let me give you some numbers. In 1929, mining was 29% of the Dow Jones. In 1980, I'm pretty sure I'm right on this, it was 8 or 9% of the Dow and the S&P, and today it's 1%. Mining has been the red-headed stepchild for the last 40 years, and that's going to change. And for safe jurisdictions, and I'm including Canada in this, it's going to be a windfall because governments have been spending money like drunken sailors since 1971 when we went off the gold standard, and the bill just came in, the bill has to get paid. All debts get paid. They either get paid by the borrower or they get paid by the lender. So we've got all this debt. The world is awash in debt, and the debt has to be paid by somebody. And mining is the creation of real wealth. And you just happen to be a big part of one of the greatest stories in the last 25 years, and that's newfound gold. I love newfound gold.
yeah, no thanks. No, I mean, again, one of these random, sort of things. It was, we're down and out, and what do we do next? And all right, well, I'm going to start a company. That go.
Now, here's what's funny. What was the big mining hotspot? If you go back to 2001, 2002, 2003, where was everybody looking? And you may be
Nevada.
too young for this.
Well, there's a few. There was Nevada. That was a big one. So Nevada in the last cycle was
It
quite.
was actually Newfoundland. They had drill rigs parked wheel to wheel. Everybody was drilling the crap out of Newfoundland. They didn't come up with very much, and there have been some isolated good stories, but nothing spectacular. And then you guys go in and find high grade, great intercept gold, first drill hole, okay? And you guys hit a jackpot. And the market didn't get it because they don't understand orogenic gold.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the deals that we're both involved in too, and I've heard you talk kindly of this one as well, as Ramp Metals out in its early days for Ramp, out in Saskatchewan. Jordan Black's the CEO of that one.
Right.
And that's another one that's kind of at its inception point. And again, it could go either way. We're still, we need to see some more, drill holes to see how this all unfolds. But when you hit 77.5 meters of, 2.5 ounces gold, look out.
On the first hole. Yeah.
On the first hole. That's not probably not. That's not a standalone thing.
Yeah, you could do a better job of explaining that deposit because it's like orogenic gold. It's a really unusual deposit. And I talked to him and I said, look, I got a problem with this because I don't have an analog that I've ever been to that's identical to this. You got this weird system that frankly I don't understand. If I don't understand, I can't explain it. However, put those drills to work and the drills will speak for themselves. But they got a giant copper potential there too. So I like Ramp, and it's another one of these really cheap stocks that you're just hard pressed to lose money on.
Yeah, I searched for analogs too. That was the first thing I was doing with it when Jordan hit it, and Jordan and I used to work together. Jordan used to work here, and as did Chris Paul. Hercules Silver.
Right. Another really great story.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah. Anyway, when Jordan hit that, I was looking at the information and I wanted to see the core pictures and sort of go through it, core photos, and look at the rock and I'm going, holy shit, like what is this? And then I asked around. I started looking a little bit deeper. I looked in that L'Orange. So there's quite a bit of gold mining in L'Orange. And there's some very sizable deposits in L'Orange with the same, touch and feel. So L'Orange, Saskatchewan, it's a pretty prolific gold belt. And then Western Manitoba's got some of these things too.
Well,
And there's some of these in Australia as well. So this is there's a really big ones like this in Australia. So it's not like it's a unique unknown thing, but I'm in an enviable position where I'm connected with lots of geos, and I'm a geo myself, and can comb through the spider webs to see what I could find.
Well,
But,
he understands the connection between Saskatchewan and Australia, and I'm satisfied that he's got a great team. He's got money. He's putting it in the ground, and I had put some money into that, and I'm quite happy. And it's another good story.
Oh yeah, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens next, right? Like I hope one of the things that Quentin told us early, which we were kind of I don't want to say chastised for, was staying in close, drilling up tight because of the Fosterville analog. That we were actually aware of. So Greg and I were aware of the Fosterville analog at Newfound early. And but Quentin added another dimension to that, and he had some experience looking at how Fosterville handled that discovery process. And there is some important differences, but by and large, and they're good differences to have in favor of Newfound Gold. But some of the interesting similarities. So when you're dealing with these extraordinarily wide, high grade, bonanza grade shoots, you really they're the sort of spines of your system that you really want to get a better handle on. And so, we were kind of from an old school camp of like, let's step out. And early days, I'm sure there's some geos listening, and it's like, oh, it's statistics. That's what determines what your adequate step out should be. And it's like, well, when it's early like this, you don't know what that is. So we're sort of arbitrarily, well, maybe we should be stepping out 25, 50 meters and trying another hole. And Quentin said, no, boys. You're going to go like 10 meters or even less if you can. And I'm going, we are going to be lambasted for stepping out 10 meters. However, we did it. And we were so happy that we did it because we understood where it was going. Then there was no question. And then we could step out bigger. But and I was giving the same advice to Jordan with ramp. I said, Jordan, don't worry about what anybody's going to criticize you for. Do not step out far. Step out nice and tight. Pop a couple holes in tight. Go around it. It's okay. You've got the money to do it. Don't worry about that. Get the tiger by the tail. Then you know what that's doing. Away you go. And so I think I'm hoping that's the going to be the process next on that one. It certainly worked for us. And now that's my big advice to people that hit something of bonanza high grade, and certainly in like an orogenic setting, tighten it up.
Yeah, but here's the problem Newfound Gold had. Your land position was so big, you could have a 5 or 10 kilometer step out. Okay, it was so big that it tended to be overwhelming, and people just couldn't come to grips with it. And the only thing that I'll disagree with is you got to have a resource, okay? The lack of a resource, they beat the shit out of you.
Yeah, no, we're wrong on that. I will say, like Lassonde curve, not cheated. It gets you no matter what. So that part is true. Now, one revelation that was made late in the game, actually thanks to this podcast, and this is going to be baffling to people maybe, is that for how much we're students of the market and how much time and attention Colin and I put into crafting Newfound along the way, whether it be its messaging and even taking that firm position of no resource. We had Chris Taylor on from Great Bear. And Chris came on the podcast, I want to say in August of last year. CJ interviewed him. and I was listening to it, and I was kind of bummed that I wasn't able to be part of it. But anyway, CJ did a great job. Actually, Jordan Black, of all people, was on that same podcast with Chris Taylor. And anyways, CJ asks him, or Chris goes off on explaining the lack of doing a resource at Great Bear, and he explains that one of the things that they did differently from the very get-go is they publicized every single individual assay, every single individual sample, all the way from start to finish, all their azimuths, their dips, their everything. And now for Newfound, what we had done was we had published our azimuths and our dips and our intervals, right? And a lot of the assay, but we didn't do every single individual sample, and that's an important distinction. Because what Chris had done with Great Bear genuinely allowed for anyone with a software, a mining software, whether it be like a Leapfrog or a data mine or any type of thing, or even on paper for that matter, it allowed for anybody to calculate a resource at any time. And unless you have absolute, complete transparency in that regard, that's maybe the only reason why they were able to cheat it.
Right.
Like to cheat the Lassonde curve and not have to publish the resource. And in retrospect, I went, what an oversight. Holy flying fuck, we should have did that. And we would have happily done it. Honest to God, we would have happily done it from the start.
Great Bear had a far more predictable deposit. I talked to Chris early on when they were at 50-cent stock, okay, and said, you don't even need me, okay, because you guys know exactly what you got and you know where to drill. And you're going to hit. And that's exactly what they did. And, giant home run. Orogenic gold systems are difficult and they're problematic. However, the best way to look at them is to find an analog. And you raised a really important point that everybody but me has missed, and that is it's Fosterville, but it's a lot bigger and it's a lot better and it's closer to the surface than Fosterville. So could you reasonably expect 300,000 ounces a year? In a heartbeat, okay? Fosterville was a giant home run for Eric Sprott and made him at least $1 billion and probably $3 billion. And all the money that he put into Newfound Gold came out of Kirkland Lake Gold. All of it. And he's done more for the Canadian mining business than anybody in history. And frankly, he's old like me. And he got bored. And he wanted to see more action.
Yeah, Eric's a tremendous person and a good friend, and we talk regularly. He's always been a believer in that, and he's not a sheep. Like, so he thinks for himself, and he does his own thing, and he does more research than the average bear gives him credit for. Like, Eric will pull academic papers out and comb through them ad nauseum, and then call you with questions. I read this in this paper, or this guy said this, and I was just taught, And so he's a student of all of this. Like, he doesn't, he may be getting older, but he is spry as could be and works really hard on all of his investments. And it could be a small one or a big one. He genuinely understands them quite well. Now, granted, if sometimes he does take some punts on smaller opportunities and won't know them as well. But by and large, one of the things I've learned from Eric over the years has been that's unique is really how he does understand what he's investing in as much as anyone could possibly understand it, and he understands the risks involved, and he understands the like all of the things, and so it's neat. I mean, with an orogenic system and like Newfound's, you they're just so rare, and to have it over such a big, it's a district scale play. It's a district that you're talking about, right?
I'm going to disagree with you.
What's that?
It's bigger.
Bigger
It's
than a
not
district?
fair to call it a district because it's bigger.
Well, I think a lot of people call things district that aren't district.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
where it's a bit of semantics, but yeah, I think
Yeah.
like if we're talking about like a massive crustal feature that if it was cookie cuttered into another jurisdiction, it would be host to a multitude of companies, a multitude of mines. So I believe that will unfold
Hang
in the
on,
next century.
I'll go you one better. Okay, it is a crustal feature, and it started in Finland. It ended up in Georgia.
Yeah. Well, yeah, actually,
just
technically,
happened
yeah,
you knew.
Alabama.
Okay, and people don't realize that. But the land position of Newfound Gold is absolutely remarkable that you guys could pick up that much land, and you're finding good shit 10 kilometers away.
Well, Bob, that was literally the thesis of it. Like that was always the thesis of the project from the start, was that that's what we knew that's what we were after, right? And so that like a big massive concept like that, and then it was the needle in the haystack problem. And it's like, okay,
Right.
well, where do you start? And so we knew we wanted to stake and acquire the entire haystack, or as much of it as we could. And and so that was it was kind of working down from that that got us there. But it was yeah, it's pretty insane. I mean, anyway, and like Scott Birdall, I look at his work up with Snowline. There's so many good, or Chris, we were just mentioning Chris Paul and Hercules, which was originally called Hercules Silver. So for the listeners that don't know this story, so after Goldspot, we sold Goldspot to ALS Chemex. Chris went and started this. This was his pet project he wanted to do. And he ended up going after this region in Idaho that was largely marked by swarms of high-grade orogenic or epithermal, which is like the epithermal is porphyries, right? So like volcanoes, and so you get these high-grade cracks filled with high-grade epithermal silver veins, right? So that's why he was originally called Hercules Silver, because he was going to go and sandbag some of that high-grade silver in Idaho. That was the game plan. And then he did some geophysics work, and he ended up with this big blob underneath, and he's going, what the hell is that thing? So as he's drilling the high-grade kind of silver story and trying to poke a few holes into that to see if he could get some sizzle to be able to raise money and keep the machine moving, and silver's hot, and this is, so it's logical. He ends up throwing a zinger down into this big blob, and then eureka. He hits, a couple 100 meters of a couple percent copper, right? And bing, bang, boom, it's this telescopic porphyry down there in a jurisdiction that no one has any idea. And for the listener, Barrick came in, scratched him a $30 million check, and literally staked fucking everything around him.
Well,
And Barrick believes...
If you go to Montana to Butte, okay, they had exactly the same thing there, where they had silver, lead, zinc near surface, okay, and people were mining that, and then somebody poked deep and got into 2-3% copper, and that was one of the biggest mines in the world for 50 or 60 or 80 years. It produced half the copper ever produced in the United States. It's strange enough, people are going back and restarting because there's a lot of land up there that was separated into different companies, and they're putting it back together. But I got to give Chris credit. at Hercules, and I have to give Jordan credit, and certainly you guys and Colin. And I'm glad to see some young people come into this business because 5 years ago I would go to a gold show. I was 73, and I was the youngest guy in the entire show. And that's very dangerous. Okay, we need some young people.
Yeah, it was. It's really nice to see a crop of young people, even in all aspects of the business, whether it be like even like Tommy Humphreys. We had the great benefit of buying CEO.CA from Tommy. I think Tommy did a fantastic job creating a fantastic platform for people to chat. Go ahead.
Guess who he went on his first trip with?
Oh, I know the story. Tommy, I know you guys know each other. That's
Um, I've been very lucky. Okay, I stumbled into this business. I've never taken a chemistry course, never taken a geology course, don't know shit about mining. But I started writing and I started going on tours. And the nice thing about the mining business, guys who know what they're talking about, you can ask them the dumbest question in the world and they want to help you. And you could send a monkey on 200 or 300 site visits, and that monkey would be pretty good after a while. And
hell yeah.
I had this extraordinary opportunity, and there Tommy was, didn't know shit, okay? And he's asking me questions, and we're having a good time. And I've gotten to see people who have done some extraordinary things. And the nice thing about the business is that it's small enough that after a few years you get to know pretty much all the people in the business. And I've interacted with many of the people in the business, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it really is a ton of fun, and I think what always got me excited about this business is treasure hunting, and I like people that tell the story. I think you've always been really good at telling the treasure hunting story for people, whether it be for newfound gold, and I didn't keep bringing that up, but like anything that you cover, whether it be ramp or any of the stories that you tend to gravitate towards and write them up. You write them up in a way that's exciting for people, and I think it should be that way. Because you're clearly excited by these discovery stories, and I think it's important to speak to them in that way and to shine that kind of a light on them, because that's what they actually are. There's just a bunch of people that get excited about treasure hunting and the storytelling side of it, and trying to find something. I mean, that to me is so fun, and so I couldn't imagine not thinking it's interesting and fun.
Well,
Especially
that's why Tommy was so interesting because he's got, we've got these ideas and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do this. And what do you think? And there was a lot of give and take back and forth. And to see him actually do it, and quite lovely, if you compare CEO.CA to Stockwatcher to Stockhouse, it's the difference between night and day. Okay, it's always been a premium service, and this happens to be a really fun area of economics. You cannot predict what people are going to find or what they're not going to find. But when they find stuff, they find some pretty extraordinary stuff. And when they don't find stuff, smart guys just move on and go somewhere else. But it's a fun business to be in, and it's certainly a lucrative business to be in if you can time it. And quite bluntly, gold stocks are the cheapest relative to gold they've been in history. And I think making money is really simple. If you buy shit when it's cheap and sell it when it's expensive, you can make money. If you don't sell it when it's expensive, you get to sell it when it's cheap.
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned that sentiment was always a good measure of trying to ascertain whether, is another kind of key point to figure out when to buy something and possibly when to sell something. You know, looking at the measure on the macro market with the cryptos and the Haktua coins and the Trump coins and the, all these coins, I mean, it almost seems like surreal. It's just so obviously frothy with and a top.
No, you mispronounced that word.
Which one?
Fraud.
Frothy?
Fraud.
Fraudy. Yeah, it's very fraudy.
These guys buying fucking numbers, okay? And I got it in my imaginary wallet. Okay, so you got
Bob,
imaginary numbers in an imaginary wallet, and it's worth $100,000. God, why didn't I think about that? And then it came out the Trump coin, and that just that was really remarkable. That was almost as remarkable as the fart coin. Fart coin.
It's honestly fart coin, cum coin. There's cum coin, fart coin, all these stupid fucking coins. At the end of the day, Bob, though, here's the thing. I thought a lot about this. It's all like it's a victimless crime. It is truly a victimless crime because both the buyer and the creator of these coins are complicit in the shameless hype, the meme of it. Like that squirrel peanut that died just before the election, and there was a peanut coin.
Right.
Like it wasn't because, I was thinking about this, like even casinos, right? Like if you go to a casino, what do you see at the casino? You see a bunch of card games that are kind of baccarat and blackjack and all this shit. And it's kind of challenging, right? Like if you know how to do it and you can have the patience and play the game and you're good at math and you can fucking do whatever, you can win. But that's not where they make their money. They make more money on the goddamn slot machines. And there's oceans and oceans and oceans of slot machines. And people know that they're going to be gamed, but they don't care. They just want to play. And AMC, GameStop, right? When we had GameStop, like it wasn't long while GameStop was on a tear that everyone understood that this video game store chain was not like there was the share price and the market cap had far exceeded the value of the business. The fundamental decoupling happened very early in, and people were just literally buying the meme, and partially to fuck big, to the hedge funds and the short funds and the shit like that, and it became almost a protest in a way. But what's interesting is it's completely voluntary in just the same way as all these shitty coins are the same thing. Everyone's buying into these things knowing that it's a pump and dump. They know it. They know it's a meme. So I can't.
I'm gonna give you some numbers that you really like. Do you know Larry Lepard?
No.
He runs a fund, and he's a really good guy, and he's a good economist. He's just come out with a great book about the economy and about gold and about the future. But unfortunately, he got into bed with the cryptocurrencies, and his solution to America's financial problem is cryptocurrencies. 2 weeks ago, yesterday, NVIDIA dropped $600 billion in one day. Okay, when the Chinese announced DeepSeek, they announced DeepSeek back in December, and nobody noticed it. But a guy wrote an article, and everybody read the article and realized Chinese got something at 3% of the cost of the American AI. So you had this interesting situation where NVIDIA got creamed, and there is a cryptocurrency I follow for a friend of mine, and it dropped 30% on the day. The next day, everybody woke up and said, well, this really doesn't have that much to do with cryptocurrency, so they ran XRP up 31%. Now, going up 31% is not as much money as going down 30% because you're starting with a lower basis. But Larry Lepard was talking about Bitcoin as money, and I wrote a review on Amazon and said that it cannot possibly be money if it's that insecure. Okay, money has to be a store of value. And a store of value is not something that goes down to 30% in a day and goes up 31% in a day. It has to be a store of value. So you've got this interesting situation with these people. You're absolutely correct. They know they're being scammed. When people go to
they're part of it. Like they're buying into it. They know what it is. They just
people go see a TV evangelist. Do you think they believe that bullshit? Nah, they want to be pitched to. It's like an honest politician. Nobody would ever vote for an honest politician. They want to be lied to. Okay, we know he's not going to do any of the things that he said, but he's promised us the things that we want to hear. So you're absolutely correct. And of course, from my point of view, I'm looking around wondering why they're giving extraordinary stocks away for pennies. And the answer is because all the money went into NVIDIA and the rest of the money went into cryptocurrencies. That just changed. And there's a remarkable opportunity right now and for the near future, and it will eventually go as crazy as the stock market. It will go into a bubble, but we're years away from that.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't call the top on it. I think it could. This could be it. This could be it right here, or it can reshape, and all of a sudden, yeah, there'll still be meme coins, but they're going to have some purpose. Like all the proceeds of the meme coin is going to achieve this greater good, this thing, you know, where you'd have something like Peanut, which is like almost like a protest meme coin, but then the money that's made by those who created the coin will then parlay that into saving the fucking squirrels or something. Like,
Well,
you know, it'll be some sort of like a meme thing where, you know, that function is going to come into it. Right now, it's just a bunch of people randomly betting on these horse bets at the fair, and you don't know who in the crowd's going to be you're randomly going to make money, but you're going to randomly make money for somebody, and we're just going to do this together. Like someone's going to walk out a multimillionaire.
But the real key is nobody talks about the danger. And 2 weeks ago, 750,000 people had their accounts wiped out 100%.
Wow.
And nobody ever talks about the people got wiped out, and that happens on a regular basis. They talk about the guys who made it. And whoever came up with Fartcoin, I thought about it and thought, you know, that's not that bad a name. I could have come up with that. You know, if my farts were worth $1.5 billion, I would be very comfortable.
Well, that's all they are now. They're just names. They're just like crazy whatever. Like I wouldn't even be surprised if that Hawk Tuah girl had nothing. I mean, she claims that, you know, she wasn't part of it. Like there's a lot of these people that as long as you have a sphere of influence, you can create a coin and the coin can go crazy. And I think sometimes there is regular human beings that are busy. And people come to them and say, "Hey, boss, you know, you mind if I make a coin on your name?" And they're like, "I don't really want to." Wow.
Yeah, but
okay, whatever. All you got to do is say this.
President of the United States should not be one of those.
I agree completely. I completely agree with it. Like I say, I'd like to see this money come back into hard assets across the board. I'd like to see people wake up, but I don't know, man. I'm not going to hold my breath. I think that they will. Some of them will, and that's enough for us to have a bull run. You know, but it's hard to say. Like this is going to wipe out a lot of people, and they're young people with not a lot of money. So
$3 trillion. Yeah.
Yeah. But mining too. Like if you look at the top, like 2011, the frothiest, you know, part of the mining, you had, you know, people with junior co's that were trading at 50 million market cap overnight, exploring in Timbuktu for fucking scamium. And, you know, like it was just ripe with that shit too. So it's hard to say. We all end up there at some point, right?
The very best book about investing ever written is Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. And it was written about 1850, and it talks about crazes people went through, like the tulip bulb craze, like the South Sea India craze, like the Crusades. There was a time in Russia that if you had a beard, you could be executed. And then when the next czar took over, he said, if you don't have a beard, you can be executed. And when you read the book, and it's about 30 chapters of one stupid story after another, when you read the book, you realize, people are dumber than bricks. And they are dumber than bricks. So all you have to do to figure out how to make money is figure out what the mob is doing and then do the opposite. It is that simple. Right now, the mob hates mining stocks, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think too, like, this is going to sound bad because we control a few publications in the space. But it's, over the weekend, I had this kind of come to Jesus moment where I'm looking at my, Twitter feed, doom scrolling at night after putting the kids to bed, catching up on my news. And I come up on, and I had seen it before earlier in the week, or later in the week, I should say, where Donald Trump is browbeating Zelensky to sign over a $500 billion rare earth deal in Ukraine. And I'm looking around and I see all the commentary and the bullshit, and I go, who the fuck has not done an ounce of goddamn research to tell everybody in the whole world right now there's no fucking rare earths in Ukraine? If there was the biggest mining company in the world has a market cap of $120 billion. You think there's a $500 fucking billion deposit of rare earths in Ukraine I cannot understand how dumb people can be to just be told something like that and not even look into it. And that includes me, like all the media.
That isn't the dumbest thing Trump said. The dumbest thing he said was, we want Greenland for all their resources. Do you know what Greenland's greatest resource is? Fucking ice cubes. Okay? They got like a 500-year supply of fucking ice cubes. I've been to a couple of mining projects in Greenland, and you can go to the moon and you can mine on the moon cheaper than you can in Greenland. So, okay, we want Greenland, and we want Canada, and we want Mexico, and we want $500 billion worth of Ukrainian resources that they already have sold to BlackRock and Vanguard. We are dealing in Never Never Land, and we need a wake-up call. The UK wants to send troops to Ukraine. Germany wants to hit the Kerch Bridge with rockets, missiles made in Germany, and Germany wants nuclear weapons. And I was thinking I was in the military for 6 years, okay? Stupid wars, I can tell you everything you need to know about stupid wars. I was in one. The UK military has 77,000 people. Are you kidding? How many of those do you think you can afford to send to Ukraine? We're doing things that are so insane now that if you had a lick of sense, you wouldn't do it. Now, the United States and Israel want to attack Iran. You can be for genocide or you can be against genocide. I don't care. There's people on both sides. However, they've got the Strait of Hormuz. And you could take a Girl Scout troop of 15 Girl Scouts, equipped with a bow and arrow, a slingshot, and 2 BB guns, and you could shut the Gulf of Hormuz, and that would stop 22% of the world's oil. And you would go to the gas station tomorrow, and the new price for a barrel of oil would be $300. I don't care if it's a good idea to attack Iran or not, because they're horrible people and we don't like them. The guy who runs the place is ugly. Who cares? I don't think it's worth shutting down the world's economy to do it. So you've got Germany saying, now we want to nuke Russia. I'm thinking, wait a minute. What did Russia do to you? They didn't blow up Nord Stream. It was the U.S. that blew up Nord Stream. Maybe you should attack the U.S. The UK with 77,000 troops saying we're going to send troops to Ukraine. Zelensky, who has been told by his government, you're no longer president, and he said, throw me out, I'll see if I care. We live in insane times, and the problem is simple, and the answer is simple. And this is something I don't think you've ever heard from anybody else. Do you know how long a meter is?
Yep.
Do you know how much a gram weighs?
Yep.
Do you know how big a liter is?
Yep.
Okay. Those are all measures of things that you can measure that are important to measure. If you're a cook, you need to know what a liter is. If you're a carpenter, you need to know how long a meter is. Now, if somebody came from Mars and he said, how long is a meter? And you say, it's about this long. And how much is a liter? Well, it's about this much. And how much the gram weighs this much? Okay. And what do you use for money? Well, we got the U.S. dollar. Oh, okay. And how often does a meter change? Oh, it never changes. It's fixed. A gram? No, it's fixed. A liter is the same every time. Yep. How often does money change? Well, let me see.
Depends on the hour, minute, second. Yeah.
30,000 times. They would say, you people are fucking crazy. Money has to be fixed. When you don't know what the value of money is from one day to the next, you cannot have an honest economy. If you cannot have an honest economy, you cannot have an honest society. And you can certainly look at the United States government, and the British government, and the Canadian government, and the French government, and the German government, say, these guys have all lost it. They are totally, absolutely batshit crazy, and they need to get back to reality. And the way to get back to reality is to have fixed money, because then you've got some concept of what value is. You've got some concept of what wealth is. The idea that 1% of the world's population should control 50% or 60% of the world's assets, that's insane. It's totally crazy. How much more money does Bill Gates need, or Jeff Bezos, or Elon Musk? When do they stop? Okay, when do they say, we've got enough? Obama's got 3 oceanside mansions, which tells you, 1, how much he really believes in climate change, and 2, he's done well for being an ex-president. He's worth $80 million. Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Chelsea Clinton. Chelsea Clinton got $86 million from U.S. aid for work in Haiti. I didn't even know she was Haitian. I thought she was from the United States.
It's so crazy. Did you listen to Mike Benz on Joe Rogan?
Yes.
For the USA thing when he went through that was insane. That blew my mind.
Wait a minute. What are these guys smoking?
Yeah. What do you mean?
Well,
given all that money away?
Pardon? No, I'm saying the United States government and USA, how can they just hurl money around?
I think after listening to that Mike Benz thing, and again, I listened to it. I thought it was like I didn't learn anything new, but I learned something new at the same time. But it was because he showed so many receipts for it that I think that's what just really hammered it home for me. I'm actually a little bit worried about this because, again, I look at the situation with Canada, which I haven't heard a single goddamn Canadian politician. They're all meeting all the Ontario premiers and all the premiers of all the provinces are going down to Mar-a-Lago to wine and dine with Trump and find a solution, and Justin Trudeau, and we're going to tariff them back, and we're going to cut off all the things are all ridiculous. I haven't heard anybody say, hey, listen, J.D. Vance just went to Munich, lectured everybody on how all of these USAID programs and basically this clandestine money investing public narrative brainwashing campaign, PSYOP worldwide, which has been overthrowing governments. Europe's involved. So many people complicit in this. The carbon stuff, all the climate stuff. It's all part of this. And I look at Canada, and it's like, well, Tides Foundation, which is literally one of the big ones that's USAID funded, for these types of behaviors, literally put Justin Trudeau and Jerry Butts and stuff in the seat in Canada and paid for the tar sands smear campaign and also to cause all the uprisings with the First Nations. So I would say to Mr. Trump, I believe that Canada has been treated very unfairly in recent years by our greatest ally. And in clandestine behaviors have basically eroded our economy and rotted it from the inside. You've created activism in our streets with our First Nations groups to ban pipelines and stuff, and now you're coming in trying to grave dance on it. I think that's really, a disingenuous thing for someone who's trying to make the world a better place. I think that would be a reasonable place to start from the Canadian side. If you want to push a button, push that one. And
let me go you one better.
No one is.
Let me go you one better. Who started the Ukraine war? And I'll give you a hint. It started in 1945. Okay, it didn't start in 2014. It didn't start in 2022. It started in 1945. Who started the Ukraine war?
It was the U.S.,
yeah. No shit. J.D. Vance
started everywhere.
J.D. Vance goes to Europe, says, oh, by the way, guys, you got a war to fight, okay? We ain't going to bail your ass out anymore. It's all your fault. I was thinking, God, it takes some cojones to blame the Europeans. Now, were the Europeans stupid? Yeah, they were incredibly stupid. I wrote a piece a week after the war started and said the sanctions that Europe bought into were going to kill the EU and were going to kill NATO, and that's absolutely correct. The German economy, which is the foundation of the economy in the EU, has been destroyed by the sanctions, okay? And then J.D. Vance goes and says, oh, you guys have a problem. Okay, we ain't going to fight that stupid war. And then this new chancellor of Germany saying, wow, shit, we'll get some nukes of our own. We'll go fight it. And the idiot that's running England says, well, we got 77,000 troops. How many tombstones do we need? We're dealing in an insane world, and the reason it's insane is because no one understands value. And the only way you're going to ever understand value is to go back to a standard where money is fixed.
Is it possible, though? Like, would you then have to put back in like usury laws and stuff like this so you couldn't have interest and grow that money supply? Like how
there's societies that don't have usury laws or do have usury laws. The 8 tons of gold. Do you have any idea of how much that is in terms of ounces?
I could do the math.
Okay, it's about 260 260 million ounces. Now, we have something like
Sure.
330 million people in the United States. So you've got like 2/3 of an ounce of gold per person in the United States. Could you make a financial system based on 2/3 of an ounce of gold per person? Of course you could. Okay.
Sure.
We're going to do it not because anybody wants to. Okay. They like stealing. People do not go to work for the government because they want to accomplish things. Everybody goes to work for the government because they're too nervous to steal and too lazy to work. We absolutely will go back to a gold standard because there's no other alternative.
Yeah, I think your point's completely valid, and I'd say, like, if we could, it's sort of like one of those, if you could approach it but not quite get there, if you could get as close to fixing that variable on money, and creating a constant, if you could get as close to that constant as possible, I think I'd be happy with that outcome. I think absolutely getting it constant, I think maybe actually technically impossible, but I'm not sure.
No.
I'm not a money guy. You've given a lot more thought to this than me.
Would you like to know how easy it is?
I'd love to know how easy it is.
Okay, the United States has $37 trillion in funded debt, has about $200 trillion in unfunded debt. You pass two laws. One is to revalue the gold in Fort Knox and in West Point to $37 trillion, and then pass another law saying you have to have a balanced budget. The problem is every government in world in history has said we want to keep spending money that we don't have. If you would stop spending money that you don't have, you would not be broke. Okay, we act as if the rules are different for government than they are for people. Now, certainly, you've been around for a while. You know people who spend more money than they have. Okay, I know people who spend
probably most people I know spend more money than they have.
Yeah, and then they go bankrupt. Okay, well, governments do the same thing. The solution is simple, and that is your income and your outgo have to match. Okay, if you spend more money than you bring in, you are going to go bankrupt. If the United States started all over and we had limited government and we stopped fighting these insane wars, and the Ukraine war is easily the most insane war I've ever seen. It was totally preventable. Nobody wins. There's no winning this war under any circumstance, yet people are dying every day. So we say, okay, we're going to stop fighting wars unless, one, we can afford it, and two, there's some purpose to it, that you wouldn't be broke.
Do you think if the U.S. stopped playing all these games, and I mean Canada plays them too. Listen, I'm not, I think the U.S. is a fantastic place and just an incredible people and one of the great wonders of human civilization. In fact, probably the greatest it's ever been. But I think at the end of the day, when I look at it, I go, right now with all this stuff and all this noise, whether it be creating conflicts in these countries, destabilizing regimes, all this kind of stuff. Funding through USAID, all these news outlets and propaganda, NGO groups and things, all this shit that just basically to stir shit everywhere.
Right.
If they stop doing that, outright, right? So let's say Musk and Trump say, okay, fuck it. We're going to cut all that stuff. We're going to, shrink government down. We're going to get our spending in check. We're going to get our costs in check. All this kind of stuff happens. Do you think that out of that vacuum that the other sides of the world, whether it be Russia, whether it be China, whether it be other places, do you think they would come in and fill that void and do that stuff?
No, of course not.
And play that game against the rest of us?
Strange enough, J.D. Vance going to Europe and telling the Europeans, by the way, guys, we started the war, but we ain't going to play stupid anymore, is giving Europe, the EU, NATO an opportunity to reevaluate where they stand. And if they would think about it seriously and say, what do we want to do about the immigration? What do we want to do about our currency? What do we want to do about fighting stupid wars? If some adults would come into the room, okay, we wouldn't have all that stupidity going on. And it's simply remarkable to me. They don't see it as an opportunity. I think it's the most wonderful opportunity in the world. Now, there are some flaws, including fatal flaws, to the EU, okay? No country in the EU can print unlimited money, okay? If they're in the EU and they're using the euro, they are not allowed to print unlimited money. However, they can print unlimited bonds. Now, from a practical point of view, if I got €1,000,000 in this hand and €1,000,000 bond in this hand, what's the difference? Nothing. It's the same fucking thing, okay? This is an obligation, and this is an obligation, period, okay? So when the UK left the EU under Brexit, it gave the EU and the UK the opportunity, let's sit down, let's figure out what works, let's figure out what doesn't work, okay? And let's do what works instead of what doesn't work. Britain's got the same opportunity now. Is there no one in politics in the UK who could talk to Starmer and say, Prime Minister, we got 77,000 troops. We need 72,000 just for ceremonial bullshit. And that's only leaves like 5,000 people we can give guns to. They had 2 carriers, and they had to stop one of the carriers because 1, it didn't work because it was built by the military-industrial complex, and 2, they couldn't get anybody to sail it. The EU is dysfunctional. The United States is dysfunctional. The Western-based, debt-based system is dysfunctional. BRICS did not start because the Chinese and the Indians and the Russians got together and said, we need to screw the U.S., we need to screw the dollar. BRICS started because those countries all looked at the dollar and looked at the U.S. and the debt-based system of the West, said, that doesn't work. It's not good for people. We need something.
We got to protect ourselves against this.
Yeah, and that's it. It's a reaction. And of course, Trump's really funny, and he's about to throw tariffs back on Canada, and that's going to be a fucking hoot, okay? Because boy, you talk about you want to stop the Canadian economy and the U.S. economy and the Mexican economy all at the same time. Just throw a bunch of tariffs in. He's stirring up a lot of stuff, and a lot of it you cannot measure success. And, God knows what's going to happen next. But is there a solution? Yeah, there is.
I think he's surrounded by some smart people. I'm cautious not to judge too much of what, Trump is Trump, and I agree, he's a funny guy. I'm careful to judge these decisions, that are made because, whether it be the Ukraine rare earth thing, I mean, that almost seems like an olive branch. Like let's just sign this deal. Everybody will think it's about rare earths. Actually, there's no rare earths, but no one's going to give a fuck. My people are thinking that you ripped us off because we've been spending a bunch of money. They're going to be happy because we got your, this rare earth deal done. Just sign it, and then the public is, contained, and we can just all walk away from it. I don't know to what level that's going on. I also don't know to what level, when I think about the West, I think Donald Trump sees himself as the leader of the United States, but I think he also sees himself as the leader of the West. And if that wasn't true, then you wouldn't have fucking Germans crying after J.D. Vance's speech, right, about what he had to say, because he genuinely is the leader of the West. And I'm sorry, that's a thing. And so I think when you're the leader of the West and you look around at Western economies, whether it be the United States and you're planning a revamp domestically, you got to look at your closest neighbors and allies. And when you're looking at them and they're all these bloated bureaucracies and their balance sheet is a mess, their manufacturing's been gutted too, they suck too. You get the shittiest allies in the world. Like look at the other side and you go, okay, well, like there's a lot of strength in that alliedship versus what we have here in the West. And so obviously he can't motivate change maybe any other way than to slap a bunch of tariffs in the right spots to pressure these governments to do a similar transformation to what the United States is trying to undergo. So that may be the MO, and maybe there's a greater good to it all.
Well, I'll get into an interesting area. Do you know what Parkinson's law is?
No.
Parkinson's law says work expands to fit the time allotted. And there actually was a Parkinson, C. Northcott Parkinson. He wrote a book in the 1950s talking about Parkinson's law. He did a study on
sounds like a shaky law.
And he learned that organizations grow at 5 to 7% a year, regardless of the amount of work being done. In 2001, the United States had 9 four-star admirals and generals. Now we have 44. During World War II, there were 3 ships for every admiral. Now there are 3 admirals for every ship. Now, if you accept that organizations grow regardless of the amount of work to be accomplished, then you also realize that you can automatically fire 3 to 5% of people a year, and you will get more efficient. Now, somebody in the administration has actually read that book and actually understands Parkinson's law. And every government in the West is bloated. And they've got rules, and they've got taxes, and they've got corruption, and they've got bribes. And the way to help fix it is to start firing people. And what Elon Musk is doing is not just firing people at the CIA, and not just firing people at the FBI, and not just firing people at the USA and the DOJ. All of those appear to be retribution, and to a certain degree they are retribution. However, you could fire 5 to 7% of the people in the U.S. government every year, and you will get more efficient. When Europe realizes that works, we have a financial crisis that everybody's ignoring. The world is awash in debt that can never get paid, and we know it can't get paid. And we've got to do something about it. And the solution is so simple. Let's revalue gold and go to a fixed currency.
Well, if Parkinson saw what these boys are up to in the Doge department, he'd be vibrating right now, I bet you.
Oh,
he'd be shaking.
Absolutely.
So anyway, well, Bob, listen, this is awesome. This has been great. Any other thing we want to touch on for our listeners before we park it? Because this has been a good chat. I'd love to do it again.
I don't think so. I mean, the one thing I'll say, and I certainly admire, I will say Trump's administration is 10 times more qualified than his first administration. He had a lot of people who were working against him in the first administration. And the fact that he's out there doing things is good. Now, will he make mistakes? Yeah, absolutely. He's human and he will make mistakes. But his heart is in the right place, and he's got some extremely qualified people. I love the head of the FBI. I love the head of the DNI. I love the head of the Border Security. I love the head, there are enough serious economists working for Trump that somebody has to be thinking about revaluing gold, and somebody has to be thinking about going to a gold standard.
Well, I hope they do, because that'll be good for us. You know, I sometimes I get kind of scared thinking about what damage that would cause, that such a transition with the average Joe, the collapse of the economy, collapse of things like crypto, or the Magnificent Seven. You know, let's say it was like 2008, right? Like, it was good for mining, but man, when everybody gets wiped out, and it's not good. But that's the business we're in. We're not, we're trying to protect our families and our own from getting whisked up into that stuff. And I think that's why we're, hiding our nuts in these trees, let's say. Yeah, it's going to be interesting transformation. It has to happen at some point here. So it's better now than never. And I think the guys that are doing it are well-intentioned. So,
It's going to be interesting.
Agreed. Yeah, for sure. It is interesting. Every day is entertaining. So, anyway, all right. Well, Bob, I guess we'll talk to you at some point. Are you going to be attending PDAC? Likely not. Is that on the agenda in the bingo card this year? No.
I hate traveling.
No. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll let you know how it goes, and look forward to catching up again. I hope you come back on. This has been an awesome chat.
Super deal. It has been interesting, and there's going to be lots more interesting things to talk about. I think that Donald Trump and his team have done more in a little over a month than any U.S. president in history, and I fully support that. And I will say they're going to make mistakes, but so what? Life's about making mistakes and then correcting them. But it is going to be interesting, and it's certainly going to be good for mining and for investors. There are real things that you can invest in that are tangible, real, and good for everyone.
Yep, for sure. Okay, guys. Well, Bob, thank you so much. Check out 321 Gold. Bob Moriarty. He's a living legend. Always unbelievable insights and viewpoints on whether it be the companies themselves or the macro market and all things in between. So, Bob, it's been a treat. Thank you so much.
Super deal. It's been my honor. Thank you.